Hi, I'm Dawn Evans, and welcome to the Inside Source Executive Video Series. With me today is Brad Peterson, and he is a partner with Mayer Brown. Thank you for joining me today, Brad.
Thank you for having me, Dawn.
So, Brad, if you were only able to give one piece of advice to the outsourcing community, what would that piece of advice be?
I think at this point, what we need to do as a sourcing community is better understand the value of contract terms. And too often we're seeing companies that look at sourcing as a way to, for example, cut cost, and all the sourcing organization reports up is how much it's saved. But of course, a weak contractual commitment to a great price is not worth as much as a strong contractual commitment to a reasonable price. And the things that we've read about, for example, vested outsourcing, suggest that a great set of terms and a great deal structure has its own value. But so far, we're not very good at articulating the value that we create by negotiating strong, appropriate contract terms that create a collaborative environment.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So when I was talking with Kate earlier today, I love her new book, by the way. We did talk a lot about attorneys and that they're not invited early enough in the agreement process. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. We are generally invited in to when a deliverable is required from the attorneys. So for example, at the RFP stage, if the company wants to send out a contract along with the request for proposal, we're invited in. But on the other hand, often by the time we get to that, mistakes have already been made. There have been opportunities to create value with a better deal structure or to mitigate risks that if we had been in those early conversations about alignment and defining the business outcomes, we would have had not just to be able to attach a generic contract, but to attach a contract that delivers superior value.
Okay, so we have to have the T's and C's. We can't go back to a handshake. We know that. But what are the critical terms that you think need to be included, or what are the critical aspects that you think has to be in an outsourcing contract?
Well, we have gotten to the point where outsourcing contracts have gotten so complex and meaningful that it's hard to narrow down to a few terms, but I would define it in a few buckets. First, you need to secure a commitment to delivering the services that the customer needs at a price that's defined in the contract, a reasonably firm price for the services that the customer needs. Second, you need to include option provisions. We know that there are risks. We know that there's a happy path where everything goes as planned and that few deals stay on that for very long. So, as Kate said, it'd be better to have a longer term deal, but with options to flex, change the arrangement when something happens. And options have a great deal of value and often don't show up in a calculation like savings. Third, Kate mentioned in this morning's presentation that it's critical to set the right incentives, and the incentive provisions are a whole separate set of ideas. The industry has come up with deliverable credits and service level credits, but we can do much better with ways of sharing the gains from innovation. And then you need alignment provisions. Companies need to understand what their supply chain looks like, and so you need to have provisions providing that understanding of what is being subcontracted and so forth. And similarly, you need to align on how you'll govern. It's fine to say we're going to invest a certain amount of money in governance, but we're still hearing about companies who are facing disputes, for example, because information doesn't flow upwards within one organization or the other. The right reporting obligations, the right quarterly meetings between strategic governance folks can solve a lot of the problems that we see. So I'd say if it's 5 categories, it's securing a commitment, providing options, creating incentives, developing alignment, and positioning for successful governance.
Okay, but we're going to have risk. Risk is inherent in any agreement, correct?
Yes.
Attorneys go through law school and they're taught to protect the company from risk. And yet we know that all agreements are going to be risky, and at some point we also want to have some flexibility.
Yes.
How is it that sourcing folks aren't communicating to the attorneys, or attorneys are afraid of the risk to the extent that the T's and C's become so cumbersome that we can't have the flexibility? Or are you saying that those two really can come together?
Those two really can come together. Yet particularly earlier on, or when you work with people who don't understand the issues well, they see risks everywhere. But if you've worked in the industry, you've seen a lot of deals, you realize that there are some critical risks, and you can identify those early on. You can size those risks. You know, how likely is it? What would the impact if something goes wrong? You can think about ways to eliminate the risk by reshaping the deal. You could find ways to shift the risk to the other party. You can create incentives to reduce the risk. You know, say, I'm not going to blame you for all of this risk, but we're going to share this risk between the two of us, and thus both of us come together on reducing it. And then, if you can't do any of that, at least you can build into the agreement provisions that give you the data you need to manage the risk. So, for example, if you have, if you're worried about privacy and data security, you could solve the problem by saying, we're not giving you, I'm the customer, I'm not giving my provider the data. Well, that loses some value, of course, but another choice is to share the risk by having indemnity provisions and so forth. A third choice is to work to mitigate the risk with stronger protections, for example, information security requirements. And then your final approach is just to say, well, I need rapid information about this. I need a commitment that within, say, 2 hours of recognizing that there's a potential information security breach regarding personal data, you'll notify me and you'll give me a seat at the table in the resolution of that.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So, all right, let's jump to the word innovation. Everyone's talking about innovation. It is the buzzword. It's either cloud or innovation. Those are the two buzzwords we hear all the time. From a legal perspective, is there any innovation that you're seeing in sourcing? And if so, tell me about it.
Well, we're seeing innovation on the topic of innovation, where people are starting to realize that you get what you contract for. And so far, we haven't contracted for innovation. So there's been tremendous amounts of innovation, and there are two types. One is innovation, which increases the supplier's profits, which often is behind the curtain. And then there's the other part where the customer is directly paying for it. I ask, you hire a service provider to develop new software, and they do. But we're starting to see companies thinking through what kind of innovation do I want, setting innovation targets, finding fair ways to evaluate innovative ideas, putting in not the old-fashioned gain-sharing agreements that often led to a lot of work but no payback, but meaningful, straightforward gain-sharing that revolves around the company's primary objectives. And again, if you can get the lawyer in early and focus on business outcomes, you can say, here's some business outcomes that I can put a service level on and penalties, but here are some business outcomes that this provider can only influence. But those are important business outcomes to me, so I will put a bonus arrangement around those. If they don't meet them, it's not a termination event, but if they do meet them, there's a tremendous advantage. So, say in accounts receivable, you might put a service level around processing time, but you might put a bonus arrangement around days sales outstanding.
Good, I like that. All right, so the other buzzword, cloud. We can't have a conversation without cloud somewhere. From your perspective, cloud in an outsourcing agreement, talk to me about data security, privacy. Is it an issue? Is it something new? Is it something we've already been protected against? What's your thought? Well,
cloud is a marketing term, of course, and it captures a whole range of technologies, grid computing, virtualization, and so forth, that are reasonably well understood. Also, the privacy and data security concerns are reasonably well understood. Here's my take on what's happened. Cloud providers came out early on. They were unsophisticated. They didn't understand the needs of enterprises. They were often small companies with no experience in information technology outsourcing or even software licensing. They had a low-cost model designed for a consumer base, and they disclaimed all responsibility, and they weren't protecting data very well. People thought that that is cloud. Now, if you go to the definition of cloud, you can also build highly secure clouds with high levels of encryption, and you can have cloud environments that are safer for data than your internal environment. These are known problems, and there are known solutions, and companies have to be careful about the cloud they choose, but they don't have to shy away from cloud because of these various known problems. You can get enterprise terms, you can solve the problems with technology transfers and so forth, and you can solve the problems with privacy and data security.
You know, I would laugh when people look at these videos later on, and I think they're going to be able to pinpoint exact time that we did this in an interview based on innovation and cloud being the two topics that we talk about. And then I just wonder what it's going to be next year. You know, or the year after that. You went through governance. I would say that would be our hot term up until the cloud. And then we did start talking a little less about governance. Is that because we're getting governance right now? Or because the contract terms have gotten so good? Or why do you think that it's not top of mind for everybody?
I think we're First, I think we are getting governance more right, and I think SIG is a big part of that.
Thank you.
The SIG has put a real spotlight on governance, and there were some presentations that you could boil down to how to explain to your management that you'll be better off with more governance. How to say, if I put $100,000 into governance, I'm going to get more than $100,000 in value. Mm-hmm. And now, and one of the points I think is important is that if we do the same thing with contract terms, we will get better terms. And I think SIG can be a part of saying, look, let's get better contract terms that create better incentives and better commitments. That'll lead inevitably to better results from outsourcing, which has the happy result of leading to people being happier with their sourcing arrangements and investing more in sourcing. Mm-hmm. And the more you invest in sourcing, the better terms you'll get, the more thoughtful arrangements, which will get you better results, which will create more sourcing and a happy, virtuous cycle. We are already doing that with governance. People are getting better returns from old deals by governing them better because SIG has done some thought leadership and elevated the role of governance.
Thank you. I mean, I love the fact that people are saying they're getting it right now, and that is so neat.
Yeah.
You know, they're actually learning and
Yes.
getting better and better within our industry, so it's pretty cool that way.
It is cool.
So we're pretty much out of time, Brad, but I want to thank you. I want to thank you for all your contributions to the on the thought leadership and to the SRC, the SIG Resource Center. Our team loves working with you, and they wax poetic about you every time they get a chance.
Thank you, Don. You've done great things for the Sourcing Interest Group, and I see a very bright future ahead.
Well, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
And this is Dawn Evans, and please join us next time on our Inside Source Executive Video Series. Thank you.